We recently discussed the idea of the M-shaped life, the strategy of building a life around multiple deep interests, instead of forcing yourself to choose just one. But reading through the comments, I noticed a pattern that really stuck with me. Many of you wrote things like, "I wish I had seen this 20 years ago," or "Is it too late for me if I'm already in my 50s or 60s?" As someone who is not yet 50, it would feel a little arrogant for me to offer you life advice. That is not what this is. But your questions inspired me to go and do the research, to look into the cognitive science of what actually happens in the brain as we age, and to see what it says about our ability to learn, to change, and to start again. So I am just sharing the research I found, along with a framework I've developed to help you put it all into practice. These strategies are built around the unique way the 50-plus brain works, and I hope you find them helpful. The first thing we need to do is reframe an old, persistent myth. We tend to see our own minds through this lens of slow and inevitable decline. We feel our processing speed slow down a little, we forget a name, and we think, well, that's it. The learning phase is over. But the science tells a different story. This is not a story of decline. It is a story of active remodeling, a shift into a different kind of thinking system with its own unique advantages. The biggest change happens around two types of intelligence. The first is fluid intelligence. Think of this as your brain's raw processing power, its speed. It is how fast you can solve a new puzzle or juggle a lot of new information in your head. And yes, the research is clear. This processing speed does begin to slow down as we get older. But then there is the second type, crystallized intelligence. This is your library of knowledge, your lifetime of experience, your understanding of complex situations. It is your wisdom, and this does not decline. In fact, it continues to grow and become more interconnected well into your 60s, 70s, and beyond. A classic study on typists showed the power of this perfectly. Older typists were just as fast as younger ones, even though their raw finger tapping speed was slower. So how did they do it? They used their library of experience to look further ahead in the text, anticipating words and phrases. They used their wisdom to compensate for speed. The mistake many of us make is that we try to learn new things using the strategy of a 20-year-old, relying purely on our processing speed. We try to brute force memorize a new language or a new skill, and we get frustrated when it does not stick. That is like trying to drive on the highway in first gear. You are working much harder than you need to. And the reason it feels this way is not just a metaphor, it is biology. If you look at scans of a younger person's brain doing a task, you will see one specific localized area light up. But if you look at an older person doing that same task, you will see something different. They do not just use that one area. They recruit reinforcements from other parts of the brain as well. It is a phenomenon called compensatory scaffolding. Your brain is automatically reorganizing itself, building a supportive structure by bringing more of itself to the problem. This recruitment of extra networks is why learning feels harder. It literally requires more metabolic energy. But this effort is not a sign of failure. It is the mechanism of maintenance. By challenging these scaffolds, you keep them strong. Even though the brain might shrink slightly in volume as we age, this ability to build new functional connections, plasticity, remains stable. You can absolutely maintain competence well into your later years, provided you use the right method. So, how do we do this? The strategy of serial mastery we talked about before still applies. This is the practice of dedicating yourself to just one major skill for a season, usually 6 to 18 months, instead of trying to learn everything at once. But we need to adjust it to fit your brain's current reality. This happens in two specific ways. First, because your brain is using more energy to build those scaffolds, we need strategic cognitive resource management. We have to respect your brain's daily rhythm. You've probably noticed that your internal clock has shifted over the years. This is a real biological change. Most people over 50 naturally become morning people. Your window of peak mental clarity, the time when you can really focus without getting distracted, is often right in the morning. So use that. Do your hardest, most demanding learning, the new, tricky stuff before noon. Next, we need to look at the spacing effect. Instead of long, draining marathon sessions, break your learning into short, focused bursts. Think 3 40-minute blocks rather than 1 2-hour block. This microdosing prevents the rapid depletion of neurotransmitters that leads to brain fog. And finally, let's talk about our mental workspace. Think of your working memory less like a computer chip and more like a small workbench. As we get older, that workbench gets a little bit smaller. You can't keep as many tools on it at the same time without things getting cluttered and falling off. The solution is simple. Get into the habit of writing everything down. Your notebook is an extension of your workbench, a clean, organized space that lets you focus on one tool at a time. The second and most critical adjustment is how we actively build scaffolds by connecting the new to the old. When you learn something new, never just try to memorize it in isolation. You must anchor it to what you already know. This is called relational learning. Research shows that while raw speed declines, our ability to see structural similarities between different domains remains robust. So, if you are learning to code, don't just stare at the abstract syntax. Compare the structure of a function to the verbs in a language you already speak. And if you are learning a new business strategy, map it onto a historical event you know well. By explicitly comparing the new to the old, you bypass the need for raw processing speed, and instead use the massive, stable network of knowledge you have spent a lifetime building. But this incredible strength, this vast library of experience, also comes with a hidden cost. For the 50-plus brain, the hardest part of learning is not always about learning new things. It is about unlearning the old ones. For decades, you have been driving the same mental routes. Your habits and professional skills are like deeply carved paths. When you try to learn a new way of doing something, especially if it is similar to what you already know, your brain's first instinct is to slide back into that old, comfortable path. This is called proactive interference, and it can be incredibly frustrating. It isn't that you can't learn, it's that your old knowledge is actually getting in the way. So the question becomes, is there a way to train our brains to become more flexible, to get better at navigating around these old default pathways? Maybe we just need to remember how to be a total beginner again, the way we were when we were small. This is exactly what Dr. Rachel Wu found in her work on cognitive agility. She suggests that we lose our mental flexibility because we've abandoned that childlike way of approaching the world. A child learns multiple, completely different things at the same time. A language, a motor skill, social rules, all without a history of old habits to interfere. In her studies, older adults who learned 3 new, unrelated skills, specifically Spanish, photography, and painting, simultaneously for 15 hours a week over 3 months, showed incredible gains. Their processing speed and working memory actually improved to levels comparable to people decades younger. Now, you might ask, does this contradict the idea of serial mastery, of focusing on one thing? No, they actually work together perfectly. You can think of it as the pillar and the playground model. First, you choose one pillar. This is your main serial mastery project. It takes up about 70% of your energy. This is the serious skill you are building, the one where you use your crystallized intelligence and analogical encoding to go deep. But then, you create a playground. You choose 2 additional skills that are not for mastery, but for brain health. The key here, and this solves the unlearning problem, is that they must be dissimilar. They must be completely different from your pillar and from each other. If your pillar is highly logical, like learning to code or financial planning, your playground skills should be physical or sensory, like watercolor painting or learning a new dance. If your pillar is creative, like writing a novel, your playground might be something more structural, like learning mechanics or tennis. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. I don't have the luxury or the budget for expensive art classes. But the playground isn't about luxury. It is about novelty. It can be as simple as joining a local choir, repairing an old clock, or even learning to play a video game. In fact, a famous study used a video game called Neuroscience to challenge the multitasking ability of older adults. Participants had to steer a car along a winding road while simultaneously reacting to specific signs. The training lasted for just 1 hour, 3 days a week, for a single month. But the results were remarkable because they didn't just get better at playing the game, their basic working memory and their ability to filter out distractions improved significantly. Their minds became so much more efficient that their brain activity patterns actually started to look like those of a 20-year-old again. And incredibly, those gains were still visible 6 months after the training ended. So, if a game or a hobby forces you to track new, slightly chaotic information, it counts. It is also a great way to connect with a younger generation on their own turf. And the way we keep this from draining the energy you need for your main pillar is simple. Your only job in the playground is to be a beginner. You are not trying to build another mountain of expertise here. You are just there to explore. And because these skills are so fresh and different, there are no old paths to interfere. This constant, low-stakes novelty keeps your mind agile, which then gives you a better neurological foundation to go deep on your main pillar. Now, there's a very important and sensitive distinction we need to make here. The pillar and playground model we have been talking about is designed for the healthy aging brain. If you or someone in your life is navigating the world with mild cognitive impairment or Alzheimer's, the rules change. For a mind in this situation, what feels like a stimulating challenge for one person can become a source of deep confusion. The goal is no longer about overcoming struggle, but about making sure you succeed. It is a big topic that deserves its own conversation, which we could probably cover another time. But it is important to note that the map is different and requires a different kind of care. With that important distinction in mind, let's go back to that question that started this whole journey. Is it too late to learn again? The answer is no. While it's true that we lose some raw speed as we age, we accumulate something far more powerful, a vast library of experience. The key is simply to respect this shift. By protecting your energy, connecting new skills to what you already know, and giving yourself a playground to be a beginner again, you might find that your capacity to learn is actually far greater than you imagined. And to help you get started on this, I have created a new free PDF guide for you. It has a simple framework for designing your own pillar and playground. I also included a checklist of lifestyle habits, like sleep and movement, that support this kind of learning. You can download it using the link in the description. I hope this video helped you see the next chapter of your life with a little more clarity and a lot more hope. We have so much more to explore together regarding the mind, and I will be arranging these topics one by one, slowly. But until then, take care. I will see you in the next one.